they say, incite hatred. The Benai Barith Anti-Defamation Commission will respond to the, quote, virus of hate that has infiltrated some sites. Its spokesman, Davir Abramovich, says, where anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial flourishes, so you will find hatred for Asians, gays, women, Muslims, and other ethnic minorities that often lead to violence. And we're going to talk to John Duffy of Trade Me soon about what their rules are, but do each of you think that online trading sites should exercise some discretion about what is for sale on those sites? Mauricio?
I think absolutely. They're just like any other retailer. They've got responsibilities, and they don't want to be showing that they're supporting some sort of view, especially some of the things that people wear these days and some of the things they can buy. I think you've got to look out for that. You have to be responsible as a company.
Where's the line, though? Am I allowed to sell my much-read John Key or biography, rather, where because that's a political document? So, I mean, are they going to go through the writings of everything you find on Trade Me and with a fine-tooth comb and decide what should and shouldn't be available for sale?
Obviously, there's a line somewhere, but you have to be vigilant, and you have to give it a good go at least, and show some responsibility as a big company.
Should I be able to buy a gollywog on Trade Me if I want one?
Yeah, I don't think so. I suppose what's offensive is subjective, isn't it? But I think, most people would agree that it's probably not a good thing to be selling a gollywog on Trade Me, or, as in the story that you were referring to just before, Nazi regalia. I think, there's plenty of material that we would agree is offensive and shouldn't be and should be regulated in terms of its online sales.
Well, it's just common sense, isn't it?
A replica Nazi uniform, historical item, Mauricio?
Well, that's the
It
problem.
depends what my plans are for it. Am I going to wear it to a party or put it in a museum? And how would we ever know?
Yeah, well, I've been going through the thing at the moment about Native American, what people are wearing that. I'm part Native American, so you get that sort of thing coming through, and you think, well, look, it depends on the situation, and I think that's what the companies should look. What's the situation? What are they doing it for? What's the reason for it?
Time, actually, you've got a couple of minutes left to talk to Trade Me's Head of Trust and Safety, John Duffy. Hi there, John.
Hi, how you going?
Yeah, as we've been proving, quite a tricky area. How do you have these conversations and work out what is right and wrong to sell?
Yeah, we often kind of sit around like you guys are doing and just kind of talk it through and work out what is common sense. There are some hard lines that we've drawn through our terms and conditions around what you can and can't sell on the site. But every now and again, items come up where, it's actually really hard to make a decision.
Will I ever find a gollywog on Trade Me?
You will, yeah. I had a look before. There's 3 listed on the site at the moment. And that's probably one of those areas where it is quite difficult to make a call, given, absolutely accepting that there are sectors of the community that would potentially find at least the term offensive.
How often would you say no, John?
To say no to?
To an item.
We remove about 15 items a year.
Okay.
For breaching our offensive items policy.
Right, John Duffy, Head of Trust and Safety at Trade Me, thank you so much for your time. Mauricio, nice to have you. Mauricio Olmedo Perez, great to have you on the panel. Come
Thanks
back again
me.
soon.
Cheers.
And Paula Penfold, we'll look forward to seeing what you've got in store for us on Sunday.
Thank you, Jesse.
Nice to have you on. 5 o'clock, Checkpoint with John Campbell on the way.
Kia ora everyone, it's quite apt that we were surprised by our own sting today. We've been surprised in many ways from 12:45 this afternoon when John Key announced that after 8 years as leader he will be standing down as Prime Minister, and we will have a new Prime Minister from next Monday. We are, of course, looking at that in length tonight on Checkpoint. We will talk to John Key, we will hear from Bill English, from Judith Collins, from the Leader of the Opposition, from fans and foes of the Prime Minister. Stay with us, there is a lot ahead on a fascinating day.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Batten tēnei. John Key's shock resignation has plunged the National Party into a contest to elect a new leader. Mr Key announced this afternoon that he'll officially stand down both as Prime Minister and National Party leader next Monday. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Mr Key says he has nothing left in the tank and could not in good conscience commit to serving out another term. The caucus will hold a special meeting on Monday to elect a new leader, and he'll tender his resignation to the Governor-General that afternoon. He has strongly endorsed his deputy Bill English as his successor. Mr Key's decision has made headlines around the world, and opposition parties have reacted with shock. The Labour leader Andrew Little says he respects the decision and has paid tribute to Mr Key's service as Prime Minister. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
Bill English says he'll talk to his caucus colleagues and family before announcing, probably tomorrow, whether or not he'll contest the position. Mr English, who led the National Party to its worst election defeat in 2002, says he's learnt a lot since then and is not ruling out putting his name forward.
Look, you learn more from losing than you do from winning. And in the last 10 years, I've had a masterclass every day from John Key about how to do politics. But in the end, the caucus will decide about whether my skills are better or different than them.
Bill English. The Cabinet Minister, Judith Collins, is not ruling out a bid for the leadership. She says she'll attend a caucus meeting tomorrow and see what happens. She says it would be good to have a fast process, but regardless of what happens, she'll support whoever is elected leader. Meanwhile, voters in Mr Key's Helensville electorate say they're shocked and disappointed by his announcement. Sarah Robson reports.
Voters I spoke to say Mr Key has been a good Prime Minister, although some say he could have spent more time in the electorate, which he has represented since 2002. At the last election, he had a majority of more than 18,000. Mr Key says he will stay on as an MP for now and won't step down until nearer next year's election in order to save the expense of a by-election. Some voters say they will vote for the next national candidate in the seat, but others say they will look at other options with Mr Key's departure. In Helensville, Sarah Robson, aho.
In other news, the Earthquake Commission says close to 15,000 claims have been lodged since the Kaikoura earthquake 3 weeks ago. It says that, as of today, 2,075 of those claims are from Marlborough. A rural Marlborough resident, Ross Ward, says he's been told he could be waiting up to 18 months for a decision on whether his badly damaged home can be rebuilt or repaired. His cottage has been yellow stickered, which means it cannot be lived in. The Ministry of Social Development has sought discharge without conviction on a charge relating to a breach of workplace safety at its Ashburton office in 2014. 2 staff members were fatally shot by Russell John Tully, and earlier this year the Chief District Court Judge, Jan-Marie Doog, ruled barriers should have been installed to protect staff. Today, lawyers for WorkSafe and the Ministry made submissions at a sentence hearing in the Wellington District Court. MSD's lawyer, Brent Stanaway, says Judge Doog found at the end of a disputed facts hearing that there was no way of foreseeing what Tully was going to do. The judge will deliver a written decision on the sentencing tomorrow. A breast cancer group says many women with aggressive cancer will live significantly longer because of a funding agreement announced today between Pharmac and the drug firm Roche. Under the agreement, a new drug for breast cancer that is spread, Perjeta, will be funded from January. The drug, which is given with Herceptin and chemotherapy, will initially be funded for those who have had no prior treatment for their cancer, but Pharmac says that may change. The spokesperson for the Breast Cancer Aotearoa Coalition, Libby Burgess, says it offers women an extra 16 months of life on average.
That really is a very significant period of time for women, young women with aggressive HER2-positive breast cancer that is advanced. They're going to be spending an extra 16 months with their families, and that makes a real difference if you have young children at home. It makes a difference for anybody. I mean, this is a totally breakthrough cancer medicine.
Libby Burgess of the Breast Cancer Aotearoa Coalition. It's 4.5 past 5. To sport, and the Wellington Phoenix have appointed Chris Greenacre and Des Buckingham as joint interim head coaches while they find a replacement for Ernie Merrick, who quit this morning. Merrick coached the team for the past 3 seasons with the best finish of 4th in 2014-15. Beaten 2-0 by Adelaide United last night, the Phoenix are now last on the ladder, a third of the way through the season. Manchester United manager Jose Mourinho has refused to talk about the referees after his side was held to a 1-1 draw at Everton. Victory slipped from the visitors' grasp when they conceded a contentious penalty near full time. United have had just one win from their last 8 Premier League games, but Mourinho believes they've been unlucky.
Best team on the pitch by far, and a result that doesn't reflect the difference of performances of both teams.
Jose Mourinho. United are 6th on the table, 13 points behind leaders Chelsea. The former world #1 men's golfer Tiger Woods has had a mixed return to the game after a long break, finishing 15th out of the 18 players at his own tournament in the Bahamas. He made the most birdies out of anyone in the tournament, 24, but also the most double bogeys, 6. Japan's Hideki Matsuyama won the tournament, his 4th victory in 5 starts. That's the news.
I'm Conan Young and I'm a reporter with RNZ in Christchurch. I'm part of a team covering Canterbury and the West Coast.
The power of local.
Something we pride ourselves on in the Christchurch newsroom is having reporters out in the field talking to people and getting those insights into a story that you just don't get from a press release.
Bringing local to the nation.
It's a job I look forward to every day.
RNZ regional reporters and issues correspondents on RNZ National and at rnz.co.nz.
Met Service weather now through to midnight tomorrow in the west from Northland to Manawatu. Also Coromandel Peninsula, mainly fine. A few heavy and thundery showers north of Auckland, easing this evening. Bay of Plenty, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, also Taupo, Taumaranui and Taihape. Scattered showers this afternoon and evening, some heavy and thundery inland, mainly fine tomorrow apart from a few afternoon showers inland. Wairarapa, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington. Mostly fine today apart from a few heavy showers on the ranges until tonight. Cloud increasing tomorrow. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury mainly fine with the odd shower in Canterbury tomorrow. Buller, Westland and Fiordland fine today. Occasional rain or drizzle developing tomorrow morning. Otago and Southland fine today. Cloudy periods tomorrow and a few showers in the south and east. And the Chatham Islands mainly fine. Cloud increasing tomorrow afternoon. It's 5:07 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina. What a most surprising day. This time next week, John Key, who's led the country since November 2008, and after 8 years still sits at honeymoon levels of popularity in opinion polls, will not be Prime Minister any longer. He announced this at 12:45 this afternoon. There had been no speculation, no preempting, no leaking, just a media conference, then a media release with the heading John Key announces resignation. To me, this feels like the right time to go, he said. He talked of family. He talked of not running for a 4th term if it wasn't his sincere intention to at least complete most of it. He expressed support for Bill English as his replacement. And that was it. But could it really be it? All of it? This was a man who seemed set on a 4th term and who had stated that publicly as recently as September. What have he and wife Brona been discussing since then?
Look, in the end, what we talked a lot about this year between the two of us was I prepared to commit to a full 4th term? And if not, 3 years, then a good 2 and change. And in the end, the conclusion we drew, I think, as a married couple and arguably as a family, was in all good conscience we couldn't say that. And I just sort of felt look, the one thing, love or hate me, and there'll be a fair bit of both on both sides. I've tried to be straight and honest with people, and I just thought I'm going to get that question the whole way through 2017. I've either got to commit to being here for at least a good 2 years after the election, or I've got to mislead people. And I just didn't want my legacy to be a guy that looked down the barrel of the camera and said, I'm with you, and 6 months later left. And I just didn't think it would leave the national government on the basis we were one in that condition, in the right condition, because that's what happened between 96 and 99. Different reasons, but Bolger went and then it all fell apart.
Yes, Bolger was pushed.
Yeah, he was pushed, yeah.
Clark lost the election. Muldoon lost the election. It's very, very rare for, in fact, I'm struggling to think of examples of New Zealand Prime Ministers who've done this. And then New Zealand Prime Ministers who've done this at extraordinary levels of popularity. There isn't a list at all, is there? I mean, you're it.
No. Yeah, so if you look at it, they either die in office, there's never a great option if you're the Prime Minister. There's either a coup or you lose an election. So David Lange went, but arguably it was all falling apart.
That's right. Sorry, I forgot Lange, but by that stage, of course, there was a terrible schism in the Labour Party. They were spontaneously combusting, and he'd had a gutsful, hadn't he?
Yeah, he was finished with it. Yeah, look, one of the things is I always thought if I was ever going to be able to successfully transition, it's like a company, you can only transition when you're in a position of strength. Otherwise, you're passing the new person a hospital pass. And I kind of looked at, all this stuff. I mean, obviously, I didn't know exactly where the polls would be, having made the decision at the end of September. But, our own internal polling is 50-27. Colmar Brunton was 50-28, and Roy Morgan's 49.5 and 23. I mean, basically, it doesn't mean that's what an election would have been or is going to be, but it certainly means that I'm in a position of strength to say to the next leader, I'm going to back you, I'm going to back the caucus, but you have some clear air.
So you know those numbers.
Yeah.
And you like those numbers.
I do.
Yeah. I mean, you respond to those numbers. And the fact you're quoting them at me might also be justification for you staying. In other words, you know the poll numbers, you like winning. The poll numbers tell you you've got a good chance of winning. If you had a fourth term, you have the very real possibility of passing Holyoake as the longest serving National Party Prime Minister. That stuff appeals to you. What's changed? Are you exhausted? Was Bonar saying, please, I want you back? What's happened in the past wee while? I mean, even last week, you looked cross with Treasury because you didn't like their long-term projections. You looked like a man who had skin in the game. What's changed?
Yeah, but I mean, I think the point is that I'm always going to give 100% in this job every day I'm in this job. So I'm carrying on with my diary this week. I've got things of opening, debates in Parliament, stuff I'm doing. I'm never going to stop until I'm not the Prime Minister and ultimately not the MP for Helensville, because that's what people should expect of me. That's what you should expect of any Prime Minister. So I've worked really hard this year, and even though I thought there was a chance I'd go. Look, I suppose in the end, the thing I had to weigh up to a certain degree was how important was it that it was a record for the sake of a record, and how important was it to balance a whole bunch of other things. And personally, I reckon I could have got there for a fourth term. Personally, I think National will get there for a fourth term, but there were just other factors, really. And no, Brona didn't put enormous pressure on me, but she's certainly happy I'm going to be spending more time at home.
Is she? So you will be welcomed home with open arms, because the one thing we know. So that I'm not in any way being naughty with that question. The one thing we know about being Prime Minister is you do not see your family for the duration, right?
That's right. And the thing is that, look, it's 10 years at the top for me. I've been the leader for 10 years, and whether you're Prime Minister or leader of the opposition, it's go, go, go. And I just feel, for her, there has been a lot of times where she's on her own. And I'm 55 now, she's 53. We just feel as though we've got a lot of great years in front of us. And there is one other thing, and like all of these things, they all sort of, they're the positives and negatives, and you write them all down on a piece of paper and you try and make a decision.
Did you do that? Did you write down the pros and cons?
Yeah, a little bit of it. But the one thing is, and this sounds, I know, awfully corny, but do you know the New Zealand public have been awesome? They have backed me. I've done stupid things and I've got things wrong, and there's been bits and pieces that haven't been perfect, but they've always backed me, and I just. Very, very few prime ministers leave grateful. They've either been, there's been a coup or they've been voted out, and they're angry. And I am, as I said, my post-Gannett presser, one day, hopefully a long way in the future, I'm going to die happy. I'm going to feel really comfortable about what we did as a government. I'm going to feel really grateful to my colleagues, and I'm going to feel really grateful and thankful to the New Zealand public. And they've backed me, and I just appreciate that.
There's so much to discuss, and I know we haven't got much time. No. But I think the fascinating thing about you is that you were, for a long time, you were underestimated by your opponents, weren't you? And you were cast as a hobbyist or a dilettante, right? Yep. Somebody who was just accumulating the trophy of being Prime Minister.
Yep.
At precisely the moment that your opponents get used to the fact that you're going to be there for the foreseeable future, and everyone's thinking, God, this bugger could get a fourth term, you walk away from it.
Yeah, but that shows you they were wrong in the first place. I was just collecting trophies for the sake of it. I mean, I came because I thought there was a job to do. And, you never get to the end of those things because there'll always be homeless people or poor kids or people that need more support or unemployed people, whatever they are.
It's interesting that you raised that. So do you have regrets about leaving those issues unsolved? Because I spoke to you, and it was, in all of our dealings, it was the most powerful and persuasive interview you've ever given me after the last election. And you said you want to change that stuff for the better. You put it on the agenda and you said, I want to deal with it. Is it a regret that you haven't dealt with it as well as you'd hoped?
Look, you would always want to do more because you're talking about the most vulnerable, and the most vulnerable need support and help. I honestly believe that we've done an awful lot in that space, and our first budget post that interview and that election was for raising benefits for the first time in 43 years. We've insulated 300,000 houses. We've made doctors free under 13s against enormous advice and pressure to get rid of working for families and things. I didn't do it. And so I just really believe that I've done a lot in that space. Now, in a way, one of the single biggest things you can do really is about reform of education to help those youngsters, because it's not just economic poverty, it's poverty of education outcomes for them that rob them of that future that you and I both have because we've got those skills. Unfortunately, in politics, I'm not sure in any country you get to the end of it. It's a journey, not a destination. But we in amongst the investment approach and the work we've been doing for vulnerable children, we've made a lot of gains. And whoever the Prime Minister is next, and I'm obviously going to vote for Bill English, so if it's Bill, he's been the architect of a lot of that work, and he's going to champion that. And I think people can take great confidence that in both that team and in Bill, you have someone that is really outstanding and dedicated to that.
Can we just speak to that issue? I was just watching Bill English's stand-up in Parliament, and he said if Mary, his wife, supports him, and if caucus supports him, he will have a crack at it. Now, obviously, you can't speak for Mary, but do you expect that caucus will say, yes, Bill, you're the man? Do you think that by this time next week, Bill English will have replaced you?
It's my gut instinct. I mean, you can never be 100% certain, and in the end, whoever the leader is and whoever the deputy leader is will have my 100% support. And there's so many you could choose from that have got huge ability. And
who are the others? So who else might you
look, you can pick anyone in the cabinet probably, and they could get there. But there's lots and lots of really talented people there. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. But one of the things you do, and one of the things I've been conscious of, I mean, I think people have seen me move people out, move people in. In a way, in moving myself out, I create lots of opportunities. Someone's going to be leader. Someone's going to potentially be, if it's Bill, the new finance minister. Someone's going to be deputy prime minister. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here, and that just creates opportunities for a backbench and for people hungry to give it a go.
Yeah, I do. When I talk to people about the government, and I say, what do you like about the government? They say, John Key, John Key, John Key, John Key, John Key. Do you? I mean, it's extraordinary, and even your opponents are now saying today, wow, this man has been a phenomenon, right? That your popularity has defied the laws of gravity. And that's a remarkable thing and an admirable thing. And I'm not in any way being snide. And I really want to put that on the record. But do you wish you'd taken more risks with that kind of unprecedented political capital? Is there anything, as your time comes to an end, you wish you'd done harder?
There are always things you can do more of. Like, I mean, I personally wish the Coombex was in an ocean sanctuary, and I've been pushing for it, and it really sort of grates me a bit that it's not, because I think our environmental credentials can be enhanced when we do that. As you know, I was a massive advocate for changing the flag because I just wanted to show the world that we have that innate confidence about our country and its place in the world, really. I mean, one of the things I think when you become Prime Minister, at a level you have ultimate power, but at another level you have to use that power judiciously, and you have to work with people. And as I always used to say to my colleagues, the easy bit's getting 61 votes in Parliament, the difficult bit's carrying the public. And so, yeah, of course I've been a bit of a centrist and I've been a pragmatist, and all those things they accuse me of are true. But that's one of the reasons why I think the public's had confidence with me, that they've had a sense of broadly the direction we're going in and what we're trying to achieve. And I've tried to communicate in pretty plain English, about that. And so I guess my main point is I reckon if I could have been more cavalier, but I'm not sure that would have lasted the test of time.
You sound buggered.
No, I'm not. I'm really not.
And I mean, well, it's December, and what is it, 100-hour week? I mean, how many hours a week do you work routinely?
Yeah, that kind of number, 100 probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. Look, it's a lot. But equally, with that comes these, remarkable opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you played golf with Barack Obama, and also, I mean, I'm just talking. That's glib of me. But you've done things you're proud of, and you go back to increasing benefits. And you're right. A Labor government didn't do that. The National government did it under you. So there are lots of things you're proud of. But I also wonder, are you sitting there now thinking, oh my God, 1 week to go? I mean, you grew up. You said to Brona on your first date at that AFP show in Christchurch or whatever the hell it was, I want to be Prime Minister one day. And you became it, and you've got a week to go. And are you feeling like, oh, what have I done?
Well, I just got off the last radio show, and they, as I was putting the phone down, they said, that's the outgoing Prime Minister. So, that's the way it works, isn't it, this business? Look, you couldn't do this job for this long and have so much passion for it and not feel something. Otherwise, why the hell are you here? But it's very hard to put into words. And because I've had a year of sort of mulling it over, I'm in a better place to understand it than anyone else. But for me, I kind of came on my own terms. I gave up this big investment banking career to come. I backed myself to give it a go and get there. The timing was really lucky, and I made it. I had that amazing, generous support from the public, and it just feels right to me. And some people will think it isn't, and some people will think it is, but I got to do what I think is right for our family. And I don't know how many years I'm on the planet. My health's in fantastic condition, and I hope it's another sort of 45 or 50. But I'm going to be grateful, and I'm going to be pleased. And I'm a looking forward kind of guy. I'm just going to look forward and do some other things, but always acknowledge that for a point in time I was there, and I'm not a guy who marks time in Parliament. That's just not me.
John Key, who has 1 week left as Prime Minister. Well, as we heard, the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Bill English says he'll announce tomorrow whether or not he will contest the position after talking to his colleagues and his family. As we heard, the Prime Minister gave a strong endorsement to Mr English becoming his successor. Remember, Mr English had led the party to a disastrous election defeat in 2002, but he says he's learned a lot since then. He told reporters that he's sad and disappointed that John Key is standing down, but that there is nothing sinister in this.
Well, there's nothing more to it. I mean, as he said in his press conference, he's always tried to be direct and open with the New Zealand public, and he is being direct and open with the New Zealand public. I mean, it is hard. He came into this job on his own terms, different from the usual politics, and he's exiting on his own terms.
Why wouldn't he stand?
Well, that's just a discussion I would have with caucus and caucus members and my family, but certainly I wouldn't stand if there wasn't strong caucus support for me standing.
You had a bad run 15 years ago as leader. Have you changed as a person and as a politician since then?
Well, look, you learn more from losing than you do from winning. And in the last 10 years, I've had a masterclass every day from John Key about how to do politics. But in the end, the caucus will decide about whether my skills are better or different than them.
What do you think John Key's legacy will be, if you could name one thing?
Oh, look, I think it's just a greater degree of confidence and assurance of New Zealanders about their own country.
Minister, do you think that if you were to put your hand forward, do you think that one of the shortcomings maybe seen as the fact that you have just been around for such a long time? Do you think that could be seen as a shortcoming of a potential Bill English leadership?
Look, that'll be in the first instance a matter for the caucus to decide. I think it's less to do with my personal situation and whatever length of time I've been in politics, and more to do with the talent and energy National has to take a government forward without John Key as a leader. And I feel very positive about that. I've been in the engine room of it for a while, and I think the public can see it's a government that's got energy and direction, and there's no reason why a change in leadership should lessen that.
Bill English, we will hear from him tomorrow as to whether he's going to put his name in the hat. Of course, Judith Collins is another that people are speculating might do exactly that. We will hear from her after the 5:30 headlines. Standing by on the phone now is Labour leader Andrew Little. Andrew, are you there?
I am here.
Oh, sorry, Andrew, you're in the Wellington studio. By golly. Well, it's been that kind of day. Surprises all round. Thank you for being in Wellington and thank you for being available to us. You were listening to John Key, I think, and you were listening to Bill English. It's a strange old day, isn't it? Because you've spent your time as leader saying, you know, you're not up to it as Prime Minister, you're letting the country down, this isn't good what you are doing, and yet today I know you want to pay tribute to John Key as Prime Minister. So the balancing act is yours, take it away.
I think, well, I hope that we have a style of politics that means that we can be generous to our opponents, that we don't have the divisiveness and the polarisation that frankly we've seen in other meant to be civilised countries this year. So I think it is a time to do that, but we do have challenges, and I've made that clear today as well. This country is facing some major challenges, people who are missing out. It just is not right that we have 41,000 people homeless. It's not right that so many young couples can't afford to buy their first home. We need urgent action on these sorts of things. We haven't seen that from the government. But right now we have a Prime Minister who's resigned after 8 years serving the public. I think it is a good thing that we acknowledge and pay tribute to those who have done public service at the highest levels of elected office, and I have no compunction in saying to John Key, you've served New Zealand and good on you and good luck for the future.
There's two obvious follow-up questions, and one is 8 years at the top, both in terms of his position and in terms of the opinion polls. What is it about John Key that has made him defy gravity? Because the honeymoon period just kept on going. Why?
Yeah, I'm not sure I necessarily have the best explanation for that. I mean, you see it. I deal with him. I deal with him in opposition most of the time. Occasionally I get to kind of cooperate with him on stuff. But the reality is my job is to act as a check and balance. That's what the opposition does. And I do have to pick up on the issues that are going unaddressed, and they are there. John Key has a very personable style. There are moments when he and I are out of the public gaze, when we can have perfectly civilised conversations. He's had very open conversations, including his views about at least some of his colleagues who he wants support on for initiatives that he's told me about. I wouldn't disclose that because we had conversations where we've trusted each other to do that, to be open with each other. So that is his nature, and I think that people have seen that, and those who have engaged with him personally have seen that. But I come back to the point, both my role constitutionally and politically, but for me personally, I have a moral obligation to advocate for those who I know and who I see have not been well served by the economic management that this government has led. And
right.
I've got to stand up for those people.
And you can do more for those people if you become Prime Minister. That's a statement of fact. Now, given John Key's extraordinary popularity and the sense of which for the past 8 years he has been regarded as the National Party's key asset, is it now easier for you to become Prime Minister, or is it too soon to say?
I don't underestimate the task ahead of me, and whether or not I think the polls, certainly the more recent ones, are entirely accurate, the truth is that is what sits in people's minds, and people may well have a view about me. Here's what gives me confidence, and gave me confidence before today, and that is when you look at both the recent local body elections and the Mount Roskill by-election, when we campaigned on issues that we know are important to people because we'd spoken to them, we'd listened to them, and we ran a campaign, systematic, methodical, brought people with us. We proved we could win. When I started in this role 2 years ago, this was after we had 4 successive elections of a declining vote. I had a lot of work to do to get the party right, get the caucus right, get the issues right, get focused. the recent events have given me confidence about next year. Now, we've had today's events. I still don't underestimate the magnitude of the task ahead of me, but the way we've campaigned, the issues we've chosen more recently, have certainly given me confidence about next year.
So are you more confident about next year now? Setting aside Mount Roskill, setting aside what you were saying about the local body elections, are you more confident about next year now that you are not competing head-to-head with arguably the most popular Prime Minister this country has seen, certainly in generations?
I was hoping to avoid the politics because I think this is a time where John Key is entitled to have us kind of reflect on his contribution. Don't underestimate the significance of the Mount Roskill by-election result. John Key had spent 7 days in that electorate campaigning for his party's candidate. 3 days last week alone. His message was very clear on Thursday. It is all about getting out to vote. And the truth is, people did not get out to vote for National. They voted for the Labour candidate, and the Nationals candidate had already campaigned in that seat. So I think there was something very telling about that result. In the end, however, it is about issues and people having confidence about the people they put into elected office. They did that, at least at the electorate level, on the weekend in Mount Roskill. Next year, it's my job to convince enough people around the country that we have the right plans to deal with the major challenges that are facing us right now. I know that's a big challenge. I'm up for it. That's what I'm going to get on and do.
Labor Party leader Andrew Little joining us live from our Wellington studio. Thank you so much for your time. Let's go to our political editor, Jane Patterson, who is joining us now live from Parliament. Hi, Jane. What an extraordinary day. And I know you arrived at work this morning, as I did and as just about everyone else in this country did, having absolutely no idea what was going to happen at 12:45. Why do you think it happened?
Look, at this stage we have to take John Key at his word that he said he did not have anything left in the tank and that he couldn't credibly commit to serving out a fourth term. And I think that if he was to leave and is to leave, he had to do it now. He could not have campaigned through election year, said in June or July, that's it, I'm out, or fought the election campaign, won, and then bailed in, say, the first year. So I think he did have a decision to make whether he was going to stay on and because his popularity is such that people have voted for National on the basis that he is Prime Minister. I mean, they campaign with John Key on their T-shirts. It's all about the John Key-led government. You hardly ever hear National Party. John Key brand is everywhere in those election campaigns. So I think he had no choice but to do it now or to stay out and stick out that fourth term if they won, of course.
So, Jane, all of that is true. His popularity is quite remarkable. Who will replace him? And is there anyone there who is an heir apparent to his popularity?
It's going to be incredibly difficult for anybody to replace John Key. I think, as you alluded to yourself, John, he is a very popular and a very competent Prime Minister, and he has served out his 3 terms now. In terms of who's going to replace him, well, everything's a little bit quiet at this stage. My feeling is that the caucus is waiting for Bill English to see whether he will show his hand or not. There's going to be a caucus meeting here in Wellington tomorrow morning where they're going to talk about the rules of the game in terms of that leadership contest. I had a very brief conversation with Judith Collins, one person who's always tipped to have leadership ambitions. She's not ruling anything in, not ruling anything out. Paula Bennett, another potential, she's not making any comments. So I think they're just testing the water. If Bill English puts his hand up, he may well be he may well be elected unopposed. He was sort of hinting at that and hinting at really wanting a fast process, as did Judith Collins. So I think we'll be a lot clearer tomorrow after that caucus meeting when everyone knows the lie of the land a little bit better.
Jane, one final question. I heard you on Morning Report this morning talking about the poll of polls, and the poll of polls was abysmal for Labour. Now, we just heard Andrew Little saying Mount Roskill, that was great. We now have a formidable Prime Minister in terms of his appeal to the kind of electorate that either votes National or swings back and forth between Labour and National. He's going. Is the future looking brighter for Andrew Little, or the polls that you were talking about on Morning Report this morning still damning and problematic?
I think you always have to look at the polls in terms of that performance of Labor in particular. But make no mistake, this is an absolute game changer for next year's election. Labor, I imagine, are popping the champagne corks as we speak. We heard Andrew Little being very diplomatic and wanting to give John Key his day of tributes and that sort of thing. But Labor leaders, and not just Andrew Little, have been trying to take out John Key for years and years and with very little success. Now John Key has taken himself out, and it opens up a whole new game for next year's election and for Labor and the opposition.
Jane Patterson, our political editor, thank you. Coming up on Checkpoint, other party leaders react to John Key's most unexpected resignation. Former National Party President Michelle Bogue tells us why she thinks John Key was such an outstanding Prime Minister. Obviously, she's an unabashed fan, and why she thinks Bill English should be his replacement. Jane was talking about Judith Collins. We'll hear from her too. All of that and more coming up. But here, first of all, is Katrina with the headlines.
The Prime Minister John Key, who announced this afternoon he's resigning for family reasons, says he and his wife Brona talked a lot this year about whether he was prepared to commit to a full fourth term. Speaking to John Campbell on Checkpoint, he said the conclusion they came to as a married couple and as a family, they couldn't in all good conscience commit to that. Mr Key says he's standing down both as Prime Minister and National Party leader next Monday. He'll stay on as an MP but will leave Parliament before the next election. He's endorsed the Deputy Prime Minister Bill English as his successor. Mr English says he'll talk to his caucus colleagues and family before announcing, probably tomorrow, if he'll contest the position. The Cabinet Minister, Judith Collins, is not ruling out a bid for the leadership. She says she'll attend a caucus meeting tomorrow and see what happens. Voters in John Key's Helensville electorate say they're shocked and disappointed by his announcement. Voters RNZ News spoke to say Mr Key has been a good Prime Minister, although some say he could have spent more time in the electorate, which he represented since 2002. At the last election, he had a majority of more than 18,000. In other news, the Earthquake Commission says close to 15,000 claims have been lodged since the Kaikoura earthquake 3 weeks ago. The Ministry of Social Development has sought a discharge without conviction relating to a breach of workplace safety at its Ashburton office, where Russell Tully shot 2 staff dead in 2014. A 60-year-old hunter missing in the Kaimanawa Ranges since Saturday has been found safe and well. And in sport, the Wellington Phoenix have appointed Chris Greenacre and Des Buckingham as joint interim head coaches while they try to find a replacement for Ernie Merrick, who quit this morning. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. Business leaders have paid tribute to John Key today, saying he delivered economic growth and jobs during his 8 years at the helm. But unions were less enthusiastic about Mr Key's legacy, arguing that workers have paid the price for that growth and are working longer hours for a smaller pay packet. Our economics correspondent Patrick O'Mara reports.
The head of Business New Zealand, Kirk Hope, says Mr Key's pragmatic, hands-off approach to economic policy has been positive. He says Mr Key deserves credit for steering the economy through the global financial crisis and the Canterbury earthquakes, while generally leaving business to get on with it.
They've left the market framework intact predominantly. They've probably sharpened up some parts of regulation and modernised it. So I think, that's been good for the general economic environment.
Unions see things differently. While the fast-growing economy created jobs, the Secretary of the Council of Trade Unions, Sam Huggard, says Mr Key oversaw the weakening of workers' rights, including doing the deal to ensure the Hobbit movies were made in New Zealand.
The changes to employment law over the last 9 years have been negative for workers. It's made it harder for workers to come together in union to organise collectively. Some of the changes in 2010 and 2013. Obviously, the changes to remove employment rights for creative and film workers was a negative.
While he was considered a safe pair of hands, Mr Key was prepared to go against popular opinion at times, controversially selling large stakes in state-owned enterprises. His shock resignation saw the dollar drop about 1/3 cent against its American counterpart. The chief economist at ASB Bank, Nick Tuffley, expects reaction to remain muted, saying the architects of the government's economic policy are still in charge.
I wouldn't really expect there'll be much change at all. I think what we've got to bear in mind is that some very senior figures still remain present and influential. And one of those will be the Finance Minister, Bill English, who's been heavily involved in the fiscal and economic policy. Stephen Joyce will be another example. So their fingerprints are likely to remain very heavily on the outlook that we have for the rest of this term.
Mr Tuffley says the Prime Minister's popularity with the electorate and his ability to sell policies will be a loss to National. He muses there may be increased uncertainty closer to next year's election about the makeup of the next government, which could knock business confidence. For Checkpoint, Patrick O'Mara.
Let's look at how the markets finished the day. Here's Jonathan Mitchell, our business reporter, joining us from Wellington. Hi, Jonathan. How has everything ended up with the time at 5:40?
Well, fairly muted in response to John Key's resignation, John. Markets across the world, though, are lower, and that's really a reflection of this failed referendum in Italy. The Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi, has resigned. He failed to get these constitutional reforms across the line aimed at boosting their stagnant economy. They've got an unemployment rate sitting around 11%. There's a great divide between the north and south, and there are concerns that because of this vote, anti-EU forces will strengthen. The sort of anti-Brexit style rhetoric may come through, similar to when Britain voted to leave the European Union. So markets across the world are lower, Asia in particular, but the top 50 index fell 50 points today to end at 6855. The currency has come back a little bit, hovering around 71 US cents and 95.3 Australia.
Jonathan Mitchell, our business reporter live from Wellington. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, Judith Collins, she is one of the people who is considered a possibility to throw her name into the ring to replace John Key. I'll raise that with her in a moment. But first, what was her reaction to John Key's thoroughly unexpected announcement?
You could have knocked me down with a feather, John. And, you hear that saying, you think, I couldn't believe it. So John called me up and said, can you pop up to the office? And I thought, oh, yeah, what's happening? So I popped up and said, what's happened? And he sat me down and he said, oh, I'm leaving. And I thought, what? So I was shocked. But he is, in a way, he explained it all to me, and he said about how he, is really hard on his family. He wanted to go out on top. He wanted to do all these things. And I thought, well, actually, you think about it, 8 years as the Prime Minister and you're going out with polls around 50%, you've got to be pretty proud of that.
It's unprecedented, isn't it?
It is. So it's his decision. I've got to say I was pretty, really shocked. And I think we all were. We're all standing around saying, whoa, didn't see that one coming.
And the nature of politics is that a week from today, someone will have replaced him, right?
That's right.
And are you going to put your name forward as one of the possibilities?
Well, I'm not making a decision on that. We've got a caucus meeting tomorrow, and caucus will decide on that process. So I'm going to wait for that process to be agreed, and I'll have a think about things. But look, today's really about the legacy that John Key's going to leave us.
Absolutely. And
that's
absolutely
really where I want to focus, because I really haven't given the other much thought, because the ramifications, I think, for the country of such a successful Prime Minister deciding he's done his turn and he's happy to move on is pretty staggering, really.
It is.
I can't think of it happening anywhere else.
And forgive me for pressing on this, because you're absolutely right. Today is a day to reflect on John Key and all that has happened under his prime ministerialship, leadership. But I also know enough about you to know that you will be thinking in your head, someone has to replace him, statement of fact. And can it be me? Should it be me? You are having those thoughts, aren't you? You are considering that possibility.
Now you think you're a mind reader, John. I think it's up to caucus. So we'll go through the process.
So if caucus say, Judith, what do you think?
It's up to caucus.
Cometh the hour, cometh the woman.
I think, John, there are quite a few very good people who might well put their hands up for this, or leader or deputy leader. I'm really not going to preempt any of that, because I just think it's today. We're still catching our breath by the announcements. We didn't have advanced knowledge, and really it's all about the legacy of stability, but also being able to deal with difficult situations that the Prime Minister's so rightly done. And I'm not going to make any decisions on that. So it's really just, we'll go through the process, find out what the process is, and then make some decisions.
Bill English is saying the same thing. I think Bill English has gone a little bit further than you insofar as he's saying, if Mary, his wife, says go for it, Bill, and if caucus says we're behind you, Bill, then I think it's a very real possibility that he will put his name forward. Could you support him? Would you endorse him?
Look, I would support whoever is the leader of the National Party. While I'm an MP, that is my role, and I have always done that, and I would do so no matter who it is, because if one of the things we've seen with leadership changes over the years is that if you have anything less than full support for whoever the leader is, then their party will suffer badly, and we've seen that in other parties. And I've been in the National Party when we also had undermining of leaders, so I know what happens. You end up losing, and you stop thinking about the people, and you start thinking about yourself, and that's when you lose our voters, and we lose the people of New Zealand.
One final question, because you say today is a day to reflect on John Key. What do you want to reflect on John Key? What do you think has been best about his leadership?
Well, we came in together 14 years ago, the same election, and it was really tough. John has been, as a leader, I think one of the best leaders I have ever worked with in any sphere, either in law, in business or in politics. He has been extremely capable of making decisions, and I think that's absolutely crucial in a leader. So at least know where you are and what the plan is. So he's great at strategizing, he's great at making a plan, and then he's great at putting it into place and executing it. Those sorts of qualities are qualities that have marked him out. But also he's highly intelligent and he works really hard. And you put all those together, no wonder he's so good.
Judith Collins, who was certainly reserving her right to put her name in the ring tomorrow. Former National Party President Michelle Bogue says Bill English should be the next Prime Minister, that he should replace John Key. She describes John Key as being immensely respected, but that Bill English is the best option to replace him as the policy architect of this government. I spoke to her a very short time after she heard the news.
Surprised and shocked, as most people were. But in a way I'm not, because he always said he would go this way. He always said to his colleagues and to the party, I'll go when the time is right for me. I think he's made the decision he didn't want to take the government through a fourth term. And the honest thing to do is to declare that now, rather than wait until after the election and campaign on the basis that he would be there. So, you know, he's giving the new leader a time to pick a cabinet, put in place some policies to take to the electorate and campaign on those policies. So I think he's done it with integrity.
So you are taking this totally at face value. You are listening to what... There is nothing else going on.
There is nothing. There is nothing. Look, I've watched John Key work so hard for the past 8 years. You know, he's up till midnight most nights. He's up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. He just gives everything to the job. And I'm not surprised that he's decided with his family that it's time for him to give something back to them.
You are a huge admirer of his, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Why?
Because I watched him when he stood for the National Party back in 2002, and he worked really hard to get that seat because he challenged a sitting member, which is not always easy to do. And logically, he shouldn't have won that selection because there was a very strong National Party that had loyalties to the past MP. But he did. He won them over, and he's very smart, and he has just given everything. He's so willing. You know, he'll do anything that he's asked. In fact, the things that he won't do are the things that his staff say, no, we're not having him do that because he's far too busy. But he just gives his all, and I really respected what he's done in that respect.
And as a former National Party president, and also as a lifelong National Party supporter, you would be profoundly grateful for his popularity too.
Indeed, but I think you've got to remember he's had a very strong team behind him, and the legacy that he leaves us will be that team. And I think it's great he's endorsed Bill English, because Bill has really been the policy architect for this government. He's the one that's reformed the public service. He's the one that's put in place the budget that has kept New Zealand in such good shape when others around the world have been failing. He's the one that signed up to the $25 a week increase for beneficiaries. So I think that New Zealand will still be in very good hands, because John Key's built a very strong team.
Are you picking Bill English?
Yes, I am picking Bill for leader, yeah.
And given what happened in 2002, and that's 14 years ago, and there's a lot of water under the bridge, and people are now familiar with Bill English and his style, so he's not an unknown quantity any longer. But boy, that was a bashing he received in 2002. It would be a remarkable feat to come back from that and win a fourth term for National. Do you think he's capable of that?
Yes, I do. And obviously I worked with Bill very closely during that period. The tide was going out for National. There's probably nothing that he could have done to change that. But he has been a fantastic Minister of Finance and Deputy Leader. He's had good experience as a Deputy Prime Minister and on occasions acting Prime Minister. He's got a great heart, Bill, and he's very respected not only by the business community but by the not-for-profit community. He's got a real feeling for people, and I think he'll make a great leader and a great Prime Minister.
Michelle Bogue, let's get reaction from two Helens. Firstly, Helen Clark, then Helensville. Helen Clark says, and I quote, "John Key has worked tirelessly to promote New Zealand and its interests over 8 years as Prime Minister. I am personally highly appreciative of the support he's given me as a New Zealander in the international system. I respect his decision to stand down now and spend more time with Brona and his children, and I wish him all the best for whatever the future holds." That statement from Helen Clark in Helensville, which of course is his electorate, northwest Auckland. Well, people were shocked, like everyone else, by their MP's resignation. Generally speaking, they were full of praise for Mr Key.
I'm shocked. Unbelievable. Didn't expect it at all.
A little bit of a surprise, but not totally.
Such a huge surprise. I think we're all with huge admiration of our Prime Minister and what he's done for New Zealand and our electorate, and absolutely disappointed to hear that, but with respect for a man who's made his real mark on New Zealand, and I think we've got to be very grateful for that and wish him the very best in his priorities.
It's a shock. Yeah. I wouldn't have expected that. Yeah.
Well, he's done a great job according to my thoughts. Some don't agree, but I like it, and the main one I like is that he keeps the pensioners means testing out. But he does a good job.
I say good on him. It sounds like he needs to go.
Oh, well, good luck to him. He's been great at what he's done. I've been a supporter, and I wish him all the best for the future.
So that's Helensville, John Key's electorate. Let's head somewhere where he is less directly connected to the people, the streets of Dunedin. What do they think about his impending departure?
Time for some different changes. A government has to come in that's for everybody.
Oh, I'm not fussed at all. I don't think it matters. Changes none of my opinions on anything.
It's a sad day for New Zealand. He's done great things over the last 8 years. But, you've got to understand the personal toll it takes on his family and all that sort of jazz. So, look, I reckon National are fully equipped to continue on with their work, and I think they'll go pretty well.
I had no idea.
Yeah, kind of flawed, really. And so you think, well, what's going on? Is there a bigger picture thing happening? But anyway, stunned.
It's a bit of a shock, but hopefully Bill English will take over.
I don't believe we'll see any immediate differences, but I guess there's that little glimmer of hope for some positive sort of change that could occur.
There's nobody else. That's how I feel. He's the only person that can lead our country, and that's it.
Tim Bolger was Prime Minister from 1990 to 1997, a National Prime Minister, of course, and he, like most people, didn't see John Key's resignation coming.
No, I had no sense that John was going to step down at all, and like most, I presumed he'd lead the party into the next election. And on all predictions you could make at the moment, sensible ones, he would have won the next election and started his 4th term. But John's decided to step aside. He's decided for family reasons, he says, and I accept and respect that it's not for him. He's going to step out of politics and carry on with a different life. And, you know, we all have to make that decision at some stage or another, and all I know is that I survived all that as well.
Yeah, as you were talking to us, I saw Joan Bolger, your wife, Mrs. Bolger, walking through the back of shot. And I recall the kind of hours, because I was in the gallery when you were Prime Minister, I recall the kinds of hours that you were working. And you had a young family then, and you were doing 17, 18-hour days, you know, week after week after week, month after month, year after
Correct.
year. It's brutal, and it takes its toll. It takes its toll on family life, and it takes its toll on you as a person. At what stage, though, because, you know, Jenny Shipley, of course, moved against you, but at what stage do you think, God, this is too much and I'm going to walk away?
Well, I'm pleased you mentioned Joan, because she was hugely important to my Prime Ministership, and I think she hosted 20,000 visitors at Premier House as an aside. So, but the reality is that Joan and I had chatted about when did I step down, and then others took the decision for us, so we didn't have to make it. But I'd been leader of the party for nearly 12 years, so long time. Fought 4 elections. Lost the first one, won the next 3. So there comes a time, and each individual will be different. Each will bring different factors to bear when they make that decision. But there's only one thing certain, that you'll either step aside or, you know, you'll die in the job. And I think John has clearly reflected carefully on his position. He has had an excellent 9 years as Prime Minister, not quite 9 yet, but I mean, he can leave head held high, saying that New Zealand's in good shape. I was part of that. I had a good team working with me, and I've got confidence in that team to pick up and continue to move forward. So I think, while surprising in many ways to all of us that John stepped aside at this stage, I can rationalise in my own mind why he did it.
Jim Bolger, Prime Minister from 1990 to 1997. John Key's resignation came as a surprise not only here, but around the world.
In breaking news, New Zealand Prime Minister John Key has announced his retirement from politics. New Zealand media reports say a new Prime Minister will be elected on December the 12th.
New Zealand Prime Minister John Key has announced that he is resigning December 12th. He says he owes it to his family to step aside and that he has given everything he could for the job. Mr. Key has been Prime Minister for 8 years and led his national party for 10.
Moving on now to New Zealand, and the Prime Minister John Key is resigning. He made the surprise announcement at a weekly press conference a short while ago, saying his family was the main reason he is leaving office.
In a completely unexpected move, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, John Key, has announced his resignation.
Across the Tasman, Australian politicians were quick to respond, with Labour leader Bill Shorten tweeting, "John Key has been a good friend to Australia. I wish him and his family all the best." Former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott said it was a fine innings. Not many Pollies retire unbeaten on a double ton, while current Australian leader Malcolm Turnbull said he was in touch with Mr Key this morning just before his shock announcement.
I heard he was about to make that announcement. I just sent him one very short message: say it ain't so, bro. He will be a great loss to New Zealand and a great loss to the world.
Malcolm Turnbull, the Guardian website featured Mr Key's departure near the top of its homepage. It said Mr Key was, quote, widely regarded as one of the most popular Prime Ministers in New Zealand history. CNN said the resignation was a shock to many observers. I think that's probably a statement of fact, a shock to just about everyone, I suspect. Thank you for being with us on Checkpoint, a fairly busy first hour. We're coming up to 6 o'clock. But love your feedback on this. You can text 2101, you can email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. We're on Twitter, of course, @checkpointrnz, and on Facebook. After the news at 6, more reaction to John Key's surprise resignation. And then, well, we've got some more of the day's news. About 180 women with aggressive breast cancer are expected to gain access every year to an expensive but efficacious new medicine. Melbourne residents count the cost of the recent quakes, and a gift from the children of Carterton and the Wairarapa to the children of Kokoda. All of that and more coming up after the pips that remain a constant, and then the news at 6.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening, ko Katrina Batanaho. John Key's shock resignation has plunged the National Party into a contest to elect a new leader. Mr Key announced this afternoon that he'll stand down both as Prime Minister and party leader next Monday. He says he has nothing left in the tank and could not in good conscience commit to serving out another term if elected. National MPs will meet next Monday to elect a new leader, but Mr Key has already strongly endorsed his deputy, Bill English, for the job. Mr English says he'll talk to his caucus colleagues and family before deciding, probably tomorrow, whether to contest the position. The Cabinet Minister, Judith Collins, says Mr Key's decision took her completely by surprise and she hasn't yet considered whether to throw her hat in the ring to succeed him. She says today is about the legacy of Mr Key's leadership, not speculation on who might replace him, and she doesn't want to preempt any decision or discussion.
Today, we're still catching our breath by the announcements. We didn't have advanced knowledge, and I'm not going to make any decisions on that. So it's really just, we'll go through the process, find out what the process is, and then make some decisions.
Judith Collins. The ACT Party has thrown its support behind Mr English, saying he's the best equipped member to be leader, and a former National Party President, Michelle Bogue, is also picking him.
Bill has really been the policy architect for this government. He's the one that's reformed the public service. He's the one that's put in place the budget that has kept New Zealand in such good shape when others around the world have been failing.
Michelle Bogue. Mr Key has been credited with ending government resistance to Auckland's City Rail Link project, but the Mayor, Phil Goff, says he's relaxed about dealing with a likely Bill English leadership.
Bill, I think, is probably the one most likely to become Prime Minister. I think that he showed a good understanding of the problems that we're facing. So I'd be confident that if we had Bill English as Prime Minister, he'd have a good understanding of the challenges we face.
Phil Goff says he met Mr Key last week and got no inkling something was up. The blogger and National Party pollster David Farrer believes Mr Key is going out on his own terms. He says he knows Mr Key was on the record as saying he wanted a fourth term, but he also recalls a radio interview a few years ago.
He said, I never want to leave this job angry. I've got nothing to be angry about. I'm one of 40 people that have got Prime Minister of New Zealand, so I never want to go out bitter or angry. And that to me is a pretty clear sign that he did want to go out on top.
The blogger and pollster David Farrer. In other news, tests have confirmed asbestos has been found on a Dunedin sports field. The Dunedin City Council ordered the tests after contractors upgrading Logan Park made the discovery while excavating a mound on Friday. A council spokesman, Tom Dyer, says work stopped immediately. The asbestos-like material was covered up, the site has been fenced off and warning signs have been put up. Mr Dyer says all the material will be removed from the site. Maritime New Zealand says a Tekapo tourism operator who pleaded guilty over the deaths of 2 overseas students ran an incompetent operation that breached many safety protocols. In the Timaru District Court today, Ricky Hartnett was ordered to pay almost $325,000 in fines and reparation in connection with the incident on Lake Tekapo in September last year. Hartnett hired kayaks to 11 tourists, 5 of whom capsized. American Daniel Holsteiner and Briton James Murphy died and 3 others suffered extreme hypothermia. A spokesperson for Maritime New Zealand, Harry Hawthorne, says Hartnett didn't get very much right.
He failed to have an adequate safety and emergency management plan in place. The plan he did have, he didn't activate properly. He reacted very slowly and in a confused way, and that led to people dying.
Harry Hawthorne hopes other tourism operators can learn from this tragedy. A Defence Force pilot says a hunter found safe and well this morning had spent a miserable couple of nights in the Kaimanawa Ranges. The hunter's friend notified the police yesterday morning that they'd become separated during a trip on Saturday. Flight Lieutenant Peter Hamilton says the 60-year-old was winched on board a helicopter after being spotted on a riverbed, waving his survival blanket. He says the hunter had not eaten anything since Saturday and was relieved to see them.
Ecstatic more than anything else. He had been out for a couple of nights and he was wearing shorts, so we weren't sure what sort of condition if he was going to be in, if he was going to be a bit hypothermic, but no, he seemed perfectly fine. He was just in really high spirits that we'd found him.
Peter Hamilton says the hunter told them he took shelter in a cave and lit a fire to keep warm. It's 6:05. To sport, and the former Wellington Phoenix striker Paul Eiffel believes it was only a matter of time before coach Ernie Merrick was pushed from his job. Merrick resigned today following the side's 2-0 loss to Adelaide United last night. The Phoenix are now last on the A-League ladder, and Eiffel says change was clearly needed.
I think it would have happened one way or the other. I think the club might have made that decision. It probably would have been 2 or 3 games later, and I think he's probably done the right thing, and it means that somebody can come in and get working straight away.
Paul Eiffel. Chris Greenacre and Des Buckingham will jointly coach the Phoenix until a replacement for Merrick is found. The All Blacks Sevens captain Scott Curry says his side's lack of experience cost them at the Dubai Sevens at the weekend. New Zealand finished 8th after being crushed 40-0 by eventual champion South Africa in the quarter-finals. Curry says the younger players' lack of experience showed in the big matches.
Not often you get to test yourself against quality sides like South Africa, England and Aussie. I think the first 2 games we probably got a false sense of what it was going to be like, but like I said, it's good that those guys have had that test now and expect them to do a lot better next week.
Scott Curry. The second leg of the World Series is in Cape Town next weekend. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Glenn Singleton wants to talk about race. He's come a long way to do it. Sean Hendy wants to talk about physics, specifically this year's Nobel Prize winners and the transitional states of matter they've discovered. Why do the same bunch of atoms behave so differently under different conditions? And Russell Brown follows the money in part 5 of his series on illegal drugs from Zero on Nights from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met service weather now through to midnight tomorrow in the west from Northland to Manawatu, also Coromandel. Mainly fine, a few heavy and thundery showers north of Auckland easing this evening. Bay of Plenty, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, also Taupo, Taumaranui and Taihape. Scattered showers this afternoon and evening, some heavy and thundery inland. Mainly fine tomorrow, apart from a few afternoon showers inland. Wairarapa, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington, mostly fine today, apart from a few heavy showers on the ranges until tonight. Cloud increasing tomorrow. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury mainly fine with the odd shower in Canterbury tomorrow. Bulla Westland and Fiordland fine today, occasional rain or drizzle developing tomorrow morning. Otago and Southland fine today, cloudy periods tomorrow and a few showers in the south and east. And the Chatham Islands mainly fine, cloud increasing tomorrow afternoon. It's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you so much, Katrina. What a day. And let's go back to what made it such an unexpected and important day in New Zealand life. The Prime Minister, John Key, announcing at 12:45 he is going to step down. He will not be Prime Minister this time next week. It was a hastily called media conference. It took place in Parliament at 1:45. And this is some of what John Key said.
I've witnessed firsthand his leadership style, his capacity for work, his grasp of the economy, his commitment to change, and most of all his decency as a husband, a father, a friend, a colleague, and as a politician. Bill has, I believe, grown a great deal since he was last the party leader. 15 years on, he is more experienced and the party and political cycles are quite different. I believe that National under Bill's leadership would win the election in 2017. This is not the time to thank all of those who've made the past 10 years possible for me. Nor can I stand here without acknowledging Brona, Steffi and Max, who have sacrificed a lot for me to be able to do what this job demands. No person in this role can succeed without the support of an enormous number of talented and dedicated individuals. I thank my Deputy, Bill English, the Cabinet and caucus for their loyalty and energy, and of course my wonderful staff, so well led by Wayne Eggleston, who's done more than I could have ever hoped or expected. I also wish to thank and acknowledge our support partners, ACT, United Future and the Māori Party, without whom the strong and stable government we have delivered would not have been possible. I have no doubt my successor will look to build upon these relations. Last but not least, I wish to put on record my everlasting gratitude to the people of Helensville for electing me and to the New Zealand public for the support, faith and encouragement. It's been a privilege to serve you all. I've always believed that the test of a good Prime Minister is that he or she leaves the country in better shape than they found it. Over time, others will judge whether I've done that. All I can say is that I gave it everything I had. I left nothing in the tank. Finally, while I intend to stay in Parliament long enough to avoid the cost and inconvenience a by-election would cause the people of Helensville, I will at some appropriate time prior to the next election step down as an MP. On that day, I shall walk from these buildings for the last time, a richer person for the experience and privilege of being here, and hoping and believing that New Zealand has been well served by the government I led.
John Key talking in the Beehive Theaterette this afternoon. He began, of course, by talking about Bill English, who is his anointed replacement. We will find out tomorrow whether Bill English and any other of the current cabinet are putting their names in the hat. Obviously, John Key's resignation came as a shock to almost all of the opposition parties. Here's Alex Ashton with the political reaction.
I got a call from the Prime Minister who said he's going to stand down, and I got to say, when I woke up this morning, I thought a lot of things would happen, but not that. I'm very surprised.
I'm stunned.
The announcement came out of left field for most, given John Key had talked about wanting a fourth term as Prime Minister prior to the last election, and given his popularity and the way the polls are going, re-election looked likely. The Labour leader, Andrew Little, admits Mr Key is a highly popular Prime Minister, which makes him tough competition. So, is his departure good news for the Labour Party?
When the nation's Prime Minister steps down, there is a time to take, I think, to reflect on that. I don't want to get too political about this, but I think, someone like John Key, who has served in the way that he has, let's recognise that, acknowledge it, thank him for his public service. That's what I'm thinking right now.
The ACT leader, David Seymour, one of the government's support partners, is congratulating John Key for his time at the helm and noted the noble way he's bowing out.
Why would you kill yourself trying to remain a leader forever when history tells us that nobody can do that anyway? For what it's worth, if the voters re-elect me a couple more times, I'll do the same thing, because being a career politician can be a little bit tragic.
But David Seymour says fresh leadership means fresh debate on issues John Key wouldn't put on the table, like raising the retirement age. United Future's Peter Dunn is also shocked by Mr Key's resignation.
It just makes 2017 a whole new ballgame, and I think anyone who tries to write a scenario now for 2017 on the basis of today's announcements would be somewhat unwise.
The Greens co-leader James Shaw concedes he disagreed with Mr Key on many things, as one expects with an opposition party and a sitting government. But he too acknowledged John Key's popularity and presence as a Prime Minister and wished him the best. And like Andrew Little, Mr Shaw wouldn't be drawn on whether this was cause for celebration for the opposition.
Nobody wants to hear that today. I think that the most important thing today is just to acknowledge the effort that John Key has put into his role over the course of the last decade. It's not an easy job at all, and regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, I think you have to acknowledge that he's been a very large figure in the world of politics in New Zealand.
Not all were shocked by the announcement.
It was always clear that the Prime Minister would cut and run before the next election.
New Zealand First leader Winston Peters had a different response to other party leaders, specifically a much less complimentary reaction.
You've got 40,000 plus homeless people in this country. You've got the latest Auckland Super City economic report saying we need 400,000 houses here in this country, and not the 100,000 that other parties are talking about. And when you see that, you've got a perfect storm of public awareness emerging.
Another who wasn't surprised?
I have to say it didn't come as a complete shock.
Marama Fox, the co-leader of the Māori Party, says Mr Key's resignation won't change the relationship between the two parties. But she says it opens the door to New Zealand's first Māori Prime Minister.
Well, if you think about the cabinet or of positions, you've got Hekia, you've got Simon Bridges who has Māori whakapapa, you also have Paula Bennett who has Māori whakapapa. Any one of those three people could take the top job.
Indeed, in a week's time, New Zealand will have a new Prime Minister. The National Party caucus meet next Monday to pick who that will be, but Mr Key's already endorsed his deputy, Bill English, if he wants the job. For Checkpoint, Alex Ashton.
We'll know more about whether Bill English wants the job tomorrow, and of course we will cover that on Checkpoint. If you're just tuning in, we interviewed John Key at length. That interview is available online, and it went to air after 5 o'clock, and also Andrew Little about what this means for Labour. That too we have already broadcast, but it is available online. We're going to look now for the first time in the program tonight at the other news of the day, and we're going to begin with about 180 women who have aggressive breast cancer are now expected to gain access every year to an expensive and efficacious new medicine. The move is part of a deal with tens of millions of dollars just announced by the government's drug buyer Pharmac. Our health correspondent Karen Brown is reporting on this.
Pharmac says the deal it signed with drug firm Roche is one of the biggest packages of medicines it's ever funded. While costs and savings are confidential, Pharmac's acting chief executive Sarah Fitt says it's a major funding package that's taken 9 months to negotiate.
As well as listing 3 new medicines, we're also widening access to 3 medicines that are already listed. And we've also been able to get some significant savings on 5 medicines already listed. So overall, the package is a huge transaction worth tens of millions of dollars.
One of the 3 new drugs funded from January is pertuzumab, sold as Perjeta for metastatic breast cancer. About 3,000 women a year are diagnosed with breast cancer, the most common cancer in women. More than 600 die from it, and of those diagnosed, about 180 have the aggressive or HER2-positive form. Currently, the first-line treatment for them is Herceptin and the chemotherapy agent docetaxel. Perjeta will be given in combination with Herceptin and chemotherapy. Libby Burgess of the Breast Cancer Aotearoa Coalition says it's a red-letter day.
This is a really important breakthrough cancer medicine, and it actually gives women with advanced breast cancer an extra 16 months with their families. So it's a hugely powerful medicine, and it will make a real difference to people's lives.
But Perjeta is to be funded only for those diagnosed from January, not an estimated 150 who are already on Herceptin and chemo. Sarah Fitt of Pharmac says there have been many submissions seeking wider access, and it'll be considered.
There are some groups of patients who are not eligible for treatment at the moment, but we are having further discussions with our cancer specialists early in the new year to look at those other groups of patients.
Dr Burgess says when Australia funded Perjeta last year, it included women diagnosed in the year until then. She says it would be cruel not to do something similar here, and she's confident it will happen.
Pharmac is going to go back to its advisory committee, PTAC, to discuss this, to get more information and evidence around that. So it's not off the table yet.
She says it's extraordinary that Perjeta will be funded without the battle that accompanied funding of Herceptin in 2008. Another who's just as delighted is the Roche New Zealand General Manager, Daniel Thurley.
What we really ought to be celebrating today is the thousands of patients who from this deal are going to get access to medicines, which for many of them will mean that this is a difference between seeing next Christmas and not.
The other new medicines to be funded from January are for chronic lymphocytic leukemia and chronic pulmonary fibrosis. For Checkpoint, Karen Brown.
Let's go to Melbourne now, where residents left homeless by last month's quake, centred down the road, of course, in Kokoda and North Canterbury, are now in a state of flux as the lengthy task of building assessments and insurance claims roll out. Boy, people in Christchurch will be familiar with this stuff. One couple have been told it could take up to 18 months before they know if their badly damaged home can be rebuilt or repaired. Ross Ward says yesterday's bad shake in Seddon has rattled nerves again. Here's our reporter Tracy Neal with the story.
The shaking that began in 2013 shows no sign of letting up. Ross Ward and his wife Helen Sangster now live in a borrowed horse truck after their cottage was badly damaged in last month's quake. The contract grape growers were outside yesterday and saw the ground move beneath them when a large aftershock struck in Seddon not far from their place. Mr Ward says the stress is too much to bear.
It's very hard to stay here, just with the simple fact of what history's done to us. And I know going forward, okay, they're saying that, yeah, that's all happened and it won't happen again, or may not happen again, but you still live in fear that it will. So.
Mr Ward believes their house is beyond repair, but now they're waiting for assessors to make that call. The Earthquake Commission said in a statement that as of today, it has received 2,075 claims from Marlborough and almost 15,000 in total as a result of the Kaikoura quake.
EQC is actively working with communities in affected areas, and our staff have been on the ground in Kaikoura, Ward and Waiau since the 24th of November to help customers lodge their claims, provide information and answer EQC-related questions.
For some, like Robin Dawson, it's too much. She and her husband are leaving Marlborough this week and moving back to Te Anau.
We've been up here 18 years and the 2013 the house we lived in got badly damaged and it's been hit again and I'm just so tired this time.
Local Anglican vicar Dawn Donauda, who's busy helping to hold the community together, is also coping with her own challenges. The 2013 Seddon quakes badly damaged her home and several churches in Marlborough.
And having repaired all the churches and repaired that, we had this big celebration. And here we are again. And the bricks haven't come out, so I'm thankful for that. But part of me is in denial. I'm just parking what's coming up.
Others have adapted and are learning to live with it. Tom and Angela Lowe run an historic family farm near Cape Campbell. The couple have 3 young children and Mrs Lowe also works as a nurse. She says the quake, which has closed State Highway 1 near their farm, is yet another natural disaster they have to deal with.
The floods and stuff, they do the damage, you fix them and carry on, whereas not having that road is going to be a really long-term thing for us. A bit like a drought in some ways, but because we're used to dealing with droughts, we plan for them, whereas this is quite different. Yeah.
Public health officials plan to extend counselling clinics until Christmas, and the council says those struggling in the run-up to Christmas can apply to the Mayoral Earthquake Fund for emergency financial help. In Marlborough for Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
Let's cross the strait to earthquake damage in Lower Hutt, where curious onlookers have gathered to watch the much-delayed deconstruction of part of Lower Hutt's Queensgate shopping mall damaged in the quake. Here's Eric Frickberg.
At 11:30 this morning, a 15-metre crane with hardened metal jaws smashed into the side of Lower Hutt Cinema Multiplex at Queensgate and began tearing away at the walls. This work had been delayed for 4 hours, while engineers made sure that yesterday's 5.5 magnitude quake didn't make it too dangerous to deal with damage from November the 14th's 7.8 magnitude quake. But it didn't, and within half an hour, a 15-metre by 5-metre hole had appeared in the wall, while debris crashed down into a deep layer of gravel put there to absorb the impact of falling rubble and stop it from ricocheting off hard asphalt and endangering nearby workers. Onlookers gathered behind safety barriers to watch the end of their multi-screen cinema and the car park below.
Yeah, I think it's a very big shame for the hut, especially right on Christmas. I do. I feel very sorry for them.
It is a shame, just seeing this structure having to come down. But then you go further and you think, well, all the people who aren't going to be working over Christmas, it's sad, but it's life, isn't it?
Despite the contractors making a big hole in the side of the building relatively quickly, this project won't be finished anytime soon, according to Hutt City's Chief Executive, Tony Stellinger.
It's going to take about 2 months altogether to deconstruct the building. Certainly a very technical matter to bring it all together with safety issues, transport of the waste and other factors such as that, but we're happy with the plans in place.
Tony Stallinger says one adjacent building, the New World supermarket over the road, should be able to reopen before Christmas.
For the Angus Inn on the other side, it's going to be in the new year, possibly early February, before they can reopen their conference centre.
For the Angus Inn's accommodation manager, Arvind Singh, the prospect of a long partial shutdown is disappointing.
I don't think that there's actually joy for Christmas this year because nobody's really into the mood to actually do anything. You go across the road to the mall, there's hardly anybody there. But for us over here, I'm doing well. It's just that it's a shame that we can't actually feed people properly in our restaurant and the function rooms in the bar.
Just across the road from Arvind Singh's office, demolition is in full swing. But at the other end of the 13-building Queensgate complex is quiet, with people shopping as normal. And while the place wasn't teeming, the shoppers that were there were happy about it.
It's a shame that a few of the other shops haven't been able to sort of occupy the empty spaces, but I mean, there's enough around, I think.
I don't think it's a danger. I think the engineers have checked it out so that it's safe for everyone.
No problems at all. I just work for Beverage Locksmiths. No, I don't have a problem at all.
Across Wellington Harbour, engineers are taking another look at another dangerous building, the Reading Centre car park of Wellington's Courtney Place. It'll be Wednesday before any further information will be divulged. For Checkpoint, Ko Eric Frickberg Tene.
Feeling for the children of Kokoda, a Carterton Primary School, Carterton's in the Wairarapa, of course, has gathered hundreds of soft toys to give their, well, friends, I was going to say, in Kokoda for Christmas. The 130 children at St Mary's gathered the pre-loved toys for children in the earthquake-hit town. Michael Kropp with the story.
Among the growing pile of toys in the office at St Mary's, there's a fluffy blue bear as big as a 5-year-old, a snowman, Kermit the Frog and Winnie the Pooh. All up, about 650 soft toys have been donated by the school's 130 children. 8-year-old Maya is one of them.
I bring a chicken toy and some little horse toys.
Carol Mullaney, the organiser, says she simply wanted to do something for the children of Kaikoura and started collecting the toys straight after the earthquake hit 3 weeks ago.
That night, on the St Mary's webpage, it was all about donating toys for Kaikoura, just to bring in a toy or two or three. And we had a box down there, didn't we? And every day it was chock-a-blocker. Full, wasn't it?
Mrs Mullaney sent her first Christmas box to children in Christchurch nearly 6 years ago. She says the toys are a way of showing the children of Kaikoura how much aroha there is for them around the country.
As long as you've got a spare bedroom, you can put as many toys as you like in it.
Must be pretty handy having Ron Mark on board.
Oh, he was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I didn't know what to do with all these toys, so I went down and had a talk to him, and he told me to give them 2 days and took them all back to his office, and they've all been weighed and ready to go.
Mrs Mullaney's talking about the local MP, Ron Mark, who is helping to get the toys to Kaikoura.
Some of these children down there, I think it'd be fair to expect that they're not going to have the same Christmas that they might have had. So contact from outside of the quake-affected area, from other children expressing their best wishes, warm regards, love, and asking if there's anything they could do might be a really good thing.
Mr Mark is talking to the Defence Force to see if they can helicopter the toys down, and he says it will be up to local churches, marae and charity groups to decide how best to distribute the toys. St Mary's principal Tim Nelson says it's just one example of the country's generosity.
When you only have 130 kids in the school, they've really stepped up big time for that. And again, what you don't need anymore can be someone else's treasure, and this will hopefully become the treasure of the little kids from Kaikoura.
For Checkpoint, Michael Kropp there.
We asked for feedback and we've received lots of it. It's a day in which even John Key's political opponents have spoken with admiration of his popularity, his time as Prime Minister. We heard Andrew Little being very diplomatic and saying now is not the day to have a go at John Key, but rather to express admiration for 8 years as Prime Minister with extraordinary opinion poll support for him still. But some of you have not felt the same way. And this text probably best encapsulates that feedback we've received. All this talk about the PM leaving the country in such great shape, not such great shape for the increasing number of people sleeping in cars, homeless and desperate, for the working poor and those reliant on government services that have been slashed under his leadership. This rockstar economy has left them in a queue without a ticket. He has polarised the country. He promised to be the PM for all New Zealanders, and he has significantly failed at that task. A representative text as part of the kind of feedback we have had from quite a few people. People talking about his replacement. We've obviously talked about Bill English and Judith Collins. Paula Bennett is another person who's being discussed. Outsiders, perhaps Amy Adams, even Simon Bridges. But Ken says, whereas Mr Fix-It, Stephen Joyce in the discussion would make a great PM with steady Eddie Bill English in finance. Absolutely no doubt in my mind that Stephen Joyce will be thinking about all of those issues tonight. Caucus will have all of this put forward before them tomorrow, and we will cover that tomorrow on Checkpoint. Thank you for being with us on a pretty remarkable day in New Zealand history. We appreciate your company and your feedback, and we will be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. John Key's shock resignation this afternoon has plunged the National Party into a contest to elect a new leader. Tests have confirmed asbestos has been found on a Dunedin sports field. A kayak hire operator has been ordered to pay just over $400,000 in fines and reparations after 2 tourists died on Lake Tekapo in September last year. And a Defence Force pilot says a hunter found safe and well this morning spent a miserable couple of nights in the Kaimanawa Ranges. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Worlds of Music is a world music program with a difference. Every week we present an eclectic mix of world music, fusion and folk roots from all over the planet. The program includes a variety of artists, interviews and musical curiosities. Join me, Trevor Reiki, on Worlds of Music, Tuesdays at 11:05 p.m, on Nights with Brian Crump.